sorry I missed last week. I was very sick, but today we are doing a Alan Wake 2 review. And as a more recent fan of Alan Wake, I was anticipating this game, but not near as much as many others who have been waiting 10 years for this. I'm glad to say that this game is pretty good, but I don't think it's quite as perfect as some others do, but it's still pretty good. This game's pretty different from the first one, but it does feel like a continuation, even though it's changed. It still has TV, supernatural, mystery, drama, tropes, but now also has new modern ones, like from True Detective. Before we get into the rest of the video, I'd like to mention that my Steam game, Laser Rush Reloaded, has a demo available to play right now. Shoot, climb, slash, dash, jump, slide, and ride into the most intense roller coaster of a movement shooter platformer that you've ever played. Experience challenging, chaotic combat and high-stakes platforming at the same time. Fight at top speed and laser rush. Also, I want to make sure the game is as good as possible before launch. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. You can do so in the Steam Community Hub or wherever else. Getting into the gameplay of Alan Wake 2, unfortunately the gameplay is still noticeably the weakest part. On paper it's still similar, with the flashlights, remove the darkness shield, and gun to finish them off combos. But this time it's been grafted onto a RE remake style feel. However, I don't consider this a survival horror, because there's just a bit too many resources. But the shooting is good, but for whatever small reasons, it's not quite as good as the RE games. In my Alan Wake 1 review, I didn't mention that the dodge in that game was fairly good. However, in this game, I really don't like this dodge. It's the weakest feature of the gameplay. You move only like 2 feet and it's really slow. This is compounded by the fact that enemy attacks aren't telegraphed particularly well. They do multiple swings a lot, which is really annoying when there's more than one enemy. There is much better enemy variety than Alan Wake 1, which is really good. However, there's a couple of types of enemies that effectively teleport around, which is really annoying. Overall, the combat isn't nearly as clean as the first game. However, the survival horror-esque element and better enemy variety makes the quality of the combat last longer. This time the game has open levels with some sizable areas that are fun to explore, with a couple of decent side quests. I do wish the paths were more distinguishable in the environments, especially at Cauldron Lake. I find myself looking at the map too often. There are some fairly good puzzles with good variety. In Alan's sections, there are some interesting bits where you have to change the environment by riding. He also has a cool mechanic where you can grab light out of a light source and move it, and that physically changes the environment. Saga has this mental clue board thing where you have to link clues together, which is a decent visualization of the mystery. However, the game doesn't always make it clear when you have to do this to progress. At one point in the game, I thought it was glitched because I was trying to interact with something, but I couldn't because I didn't have Saga pieces it together in her head on the clue board, which was really annoying. I even ended up reloading an older save at one point before I figured it out. So let's get into the story. One thing I want to say is that it's a hard sequel. In order to fully get this game, you're going to need to have played AW1 and be familiar with concepts from American Nightmare and Control. Initially seeing that it was a split narrative with one story for Saga and one for Alan was a bit worrying, but I am glad to say they pulled it off fairly well, where both stories are good and feel well connected, and it all works a lot better than something like Bill and Ted 3. The story is still a good send up to the TV supernatural mystery drama, things like Stephen King miniseries and Twin Peaks. The question to answer the question thing that was done so well in AW1 isn't quite as good here, although it does make sense that it fits more in with modern TV where they don't do that as much. Lost probably drove that to its breaking point. They're still good, mostly archetypal main and side characters. Saga in the end is a good character, but she kind of threw me off at first. Firstly, Saga is pretty well the only non-archetypal character in this series, and she comes off as a bit of a blank slate here. However, as the game goes on and the horror story gets to her, we get to see her be more vulnerable and find out what really matters to her, and she's a pretty good character by the end of it. Speaking of archetypal characters, Alex Casey is a very fun character who is the embodiment of the grizzled old detective archetype. He's a great addition to the cast, probably one of my favorite Alan Wake characters now. Alan is still really good like he was in AW1, and it's fun to see how the dark place is driving him mad. One final thing about the story is that it ends in another cliffhanger, which is a bit frustrating, but it far from ruins the story. Also, it is disappointing that there weren't any new Night Springs episodes. There are these live-action, local, low-budget commercials trying to go for the same cheesy vein, but they're not quite as good. They're still fun, though. There's also a bit in Alan's campaign where you collect this, 70s art house noir horror film, which is interesting. There's also bits of the main story that are filmed in live action that blend fairly well with the game. Getting into the aesthetics, the environments are really good. I especially like Dark Place, New York. It's the most grimy and dark New York you've ever seen, and there's a lot of different types of cool interiors, like this haunted city hotel. The Bright Falls area is still good with its Twin Peaks feel. You get to see a lot of recreated areas and some fun new ones like Coffee World, which is like one of those super small country amusement parks. Overall, there's a really nice, extremely dark color palette with splashes of light. Sometimes there are these really strong colors. There's also some cool effects, mainly this one where they have one 3D environment transparently overlaid on top of another. The visual fidelity is still really good, although I imagine it's not quite as mind-blowing as Alan Wake 1 in 2010. There's some good music, especially this one song that gets used in this wacky, fun music video type sort of level. There were a couple of technical issues where sometimes bits of the environment would flicker, and also a couple of cases of lip syncing issues. Overall, this is a pretty good action horror that builds upon what was done in the original, and I'm giving it an 8.95. Now I'm going to get into a bit of spoilers, so tune out if you don't want that. We find out that Saga's profiling ability is supernatural, but I honestly think they should have just said it up front. I think you're supposed to buy that it's just a video gamey thing, but I didn't really see that and just found it kind of off. When you find out the tree of the cult wasn't actually creating the Taken, they're trying to prevent them. I like how that goes against the evil hillbilly stereotype, but it's really a bit contrived how it's supposed to make sense that with all their stuff you go through, you never figure it out before it's revealed. So that was it. Pretty quick spoiler talk. Thank you to anyone who likes, comments, or subscribes. That's it.